Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers, of course, your Arizona Cardinals, recording on a Tuesday afternoon with Seth Cox, my co-host from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, and we're at episode 740. We just finished Wild Card Weekend. We've got more coaching stuff. We've got all pro stuff. It's been an eventful yet non-eventful few days in terms of coaching, Seth, as the candidate pool has grown to 11. Is it not 11 plus contact with John Harbaugh? So the Cardinals are casting a wide net. They said they're not going to be rushed, and we'll see how that all goes down, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the plan, and it makes sense when you're talking about, the fourth head coach since I took over the site from you a decade ago, right? Like 10 years ago with Bruce Arians, and since then we've had Steve Wilkes, Cliff Kingsbury, Jonathan Gannon. So this will be the fourth different head coach, fifth overall in the last.
This is my
decade.
I was covering the Cardinals when Bruce Arians was hired, when Wilkes was hired, when Kingsbury was hired, when Gannon was hired, and now whoever this guy is that they're gonna hire. And one thing that is note, if you haven't noticed this, you should notice how almost every other NFL team that is hiring a head coach or a general manager, they put out big graphics and announcements saying that they interviewed such and such a person. You know, the last time the Cardinals did that was 2013 when they hired Bruce Arians. They did talk about, now they played around with the Andy Reid hiring. Remember when Tim Ring came out and said that that Andy Reid was set to be their next head coach. Mark Dalton came out and, blasted him for it. Like, there's no such thing. Only to find out, 4 years ago, Andy Reid tells the story about he was on a plane to go to Arizona. I'm like, since 2013, since the Bruce Arians hire, I haven't, all we get are rumors. All we get are rumors and reports of their head coaching situation, rather than confirmed announcements that they're interviewing guys. And here the Atlantic Falcons are out there interviewing, and they've spoken with John Harbaugh. We are left with reports of guys that they've contacted. Now, we went over eight candidates. What was it, last week? And there have since been 3 more reported candidates. Plus, we all want, the name. There's 2 big names. There's 2 big names on the market right now, obviously being, the biggest name came out as Mike Tomlin just stepped down today. But his is a situation because he's not fired. He stepped down. And so the Steelers retain his rights. Or anyone who considers wanting to coach them would need to compensate Pittsburgh. But it sounded like he's simply just stepping away, probably going to go into television and make some easy money that way. And then in a couple of years, pull a Sean Payton and head back. But John Harbaugh, fired by the Baltimore Ravens, has so many playoff appearances, has a Super Bowl win, has been one of the best coaches, most respected coaches in the NFL for a long time. The Cardinals, here's what we know, have had at least a phone call with him or his representation. And
Hell yeah.
Isn't that so exciting to know that Well, I'm sure you got a kick out of the graphics that came out on social media, with all the other teams announcing their visits and people poking fun at the Cardinals and putting graphics as all John Harbaugh called.
I know that's where we're at, though. I mean, and that's the hard part overall, and something that you and I have understood for a while. That we try and why, whether it's Jonathan Gannon, whether it was Cliff Kingsbury, whether it's Kyler Murray, why we're always so hopeful in the beginning and also very resistant to they just need to blow it up, because the reality is that's always the answer for this organization. They've never had a franchise quarterback. They've never had a coach make it to year 6. And I'm not saying that they need to, but when you're looking at, the division they're in, something that you alluded to early, Mike McDonald's obviously just in year 2, but he's already maybe the best coach in the division. But before that, Pete Carroll was there forever. I mean, ever. Obviously, we know that Sean McVay's been there forever in Los Angeles, and now Kyle Shanahan's been there forever in San Francisco. And so that's what you have to think about. Think about it from this perspective. Since Kyle Shanahan took over in 2017, the Cardinals are going to have their 5th head coach. 2017, Jess, that's not even a decade. And obviously Arians retiring, and we've talked about that a number of times, So when you look at it from that perspective, you're looking at the reality that this franchise is being laughed at just as much as we are laughing at them, right? Because you can't look at the Cardinals and see anything.
Hard to look at them. They're completely. It feels like they're a serious, unserious franchise. They act serious and do very unserious things.
Right, and so that's the thing. I mean, you're talking about, again, the Rams and the 49ers since 2017 have had the same coach. The Cardinals are hiring their 5th coach since then. That's just that's a baffling statement. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you see that there are reasons that when Jonathan Gannon, maybe Jess and I don't love the hire, and I can't even remember what we said to each other off the air or talked about that long ago, right? But maybe we didn't love the hire at the time, but we were going to be hopeful that it worked out because Cliff didn't work out, and because Steve didn't work out, and because Bruce left high and dry. And so when you're in year 14 of doing this podcast, and you're looking at it and you're going, okay, we're gonna have another head coach again. Maybe this one will make it into the think about that. Yeah, Cliff technically got a second contract, but he never coached in it ever once.
Not.
So
and he's still got 2 more years of payment on it. That's the great thing. That's the great thing about this. Both Cardinals are going to be paying Cliff, Gannon, and a new head coach for these next 2 years. This is glorious. It's glorious, man. Hey, it's not my money. Not my money. But geez. So we do have John Harbaugh phone call. Is anyone believe for a moment that the Cardinals are even close, especially with what Tony Grossi came out from ESPN Cleveland that Harbaugh has this list of demands. I don't know how much to believe him, but when he says $20 million in salary, believable. I think he was making 16 in Baltimore. $10 million for his staff, also believable, because when you have that much pool, you like it, and that's the sort of thing that Kenny Dillingham did at Arizona State. Like, not only did he get a raise and extension, like an auto extension type things, he secured more money for his staff, which is how you build success. Is like, you feel you are a good head coach, you need staff members that you need guys that will stick around, guys that you can trust. You want to be able to bring the best guys. So that's good. Full control over the roster, believable. Wants to pick his own general manager. That's going to be a little more difficult to do in some situations. But that would, I mean, looking at those, there's none of those. Honestly, do you think the Cardinals, if those are in fact John Harbaugh's bare minimum, or the bar has been set for him, that the Cardinals would do any of those?
No, just because of Monty. That's the thing. Now, I think there's a caveat to like the GM thing, right? I don't think that it's that he wants to pick the GM per se, as much as if he doesn't agree with the GM, he wants
to pick someone else.
Yeah, exactly. So like, so if Monty was agreeable to it, I guess it would make sense, right? But then Monty's kind of just a figurehead. But that's something we've talked about too, right? Like they need a team president more than anything else. So Michael can just be a billionaire pilot. So
honestly, like if you're going to get a guy like Harbaugh, I was talking about this with someone I know. I was like, if you're going to, like, if you want a guy like Harbaugh, you go all in and you say, all right. And that's the move. If the Cardinals are like serious about things, honestly, that's the move that will move this fan base to some excitement, to say, and I know they kind of did that with Buddy Ryan way long ago. And Bruce Arians came in with a certain list of expectations that he had for him to be hired. But, if you really want to do things differently, you go John Harbaugh, and then if it doesn't work out, John Harbaugh's washed up. Right? Now, it's an expensive one, but if you want a head coach like John Harbaugh, you want all of what John Harbaugh does. You don't want to limit him or handcuff him in any way. You don't want, say, Monty is in charge of the roster when Harbaugh is the one who's, that you do that. That said, why are we wasting our breath on talking about John Harbaugh? Because people want to hear about it. But there's two other names. Both are names that people were hoping to hear. One is Mike LaFleur, the LA Rams offensive coordinator, and Chris Shula, their defensive coordinator. So we've got two more McVay guys, NFC West ties. What do we think about? And then there's another guy that came out today, and that is Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. What do you think about those guys? Because, for me, it felt like not including McVay guys would have been a travesty. Would have been like, with the success that McVay has had with his assistants and going and being successful other places, it felt like if they didn't, that they weren't being serious. But give me your thoughts on both LaFleur and Shula.
Yeah, I like both. I'm interested in LaFleur. I mean, honestly, both. What they can do from a coaching hire standpoint outside of or who they can bring in, because like you said, they're both, theoretically Kyle Shanahan, descendants or Kyle Shanahan trees guys. You look at it, LaFleur was in Cleveland with Mike Pettin back in the day. Then he spent 2 years in Atlanta, technically under Dan Quinn, but really, let's be honest, he was under Kyle Shanahan. And then 4 years as a passing game coordinator with the San Francisco 49ers before, we have to be honest, a failed 2-year stint as an OC with the New York Jets and Robert Saleh. It just didn't work out.
Granted, who was he working with? The
Yeah.
quarterback at the time, Zach Wilson, and then
Zach. Yeah, and Zach Wilson both seasons. Some Mike White, some Joe Flacco. I will say that second year, getting to 7-10, despite the offensive limitations, says a lot to me about a lot of the coaches involved there, whether it's Saleh, who we've talked about before, or LaFleur. But then you go back and now you look at him the last 3 years, with the Rams, right? And offensive points per game, 8th overall in 2023, 20th overall in 2024, and 1st overall this year. And then yards per game, 7th in 23, 15th in 24, and then 1st this year. So, you're talking about a fantastic offensive mind and play caller. Those things matter, man. And I think he's a guy that you look at as, you hope that it's not just the Cardinals and he's the pumpkin of the group, but overall he's done a good job. And then you look at Shula. So here's the interesting thing to me. LaFleur, obviously, part of the Shanahan coaching tree. Shula, while he is via Sean McVay, really isn't, right? Like, Shula he was a defensive quality control coach. So for those that are kind of like uninformed on how that works, that's basically like the guy that charts things, the guy that if they're making a play call on defense, he's the one that charts, like, okay, we ran this defense against this formation, against this, in this situation at this time of the game on the field and things like that. Like he tracks that stuff. He did that for 2 years under Mike McCoy in San Diego. And since then he's been with the Rams. He's
been part of McVay's staff since the beginning.
And so you look at that and you say, okay, again, more than LaFleur, what does Shula pull? Now, there is the caveat. He's NFL royalty, right? Like his
yes.
grandfather is Don Shula, the great Don Shula, dad, David Shula. So, there is some nepotism that allows him to probably have a decent Rolodex of coaches he can look towards. And he has really put his time in. Again, defensive quality control coach, assistant linebackers coaches his first 2 years in LA, outside linebacker coach in LA, linebackers coach, defensive backs being the defensive passing game coordinator,
pass rush coordinator.
Yep.
So he's literally done it all defensively.
Yeah, outside of the interior defensive line.
Yeah.
But even then, he's been a pass rush coordinator, so he's done a lot. And then you look at his defensive ranks. They've never knocked your socks off, right? Like, but the Rams defenses have never necessarily done that. In most of the time in McVay's time, it's never been the defenses have been good. They've just found another gear in the playoffs. Like, you think about the year that they lost to the Packers in the divisional round, right? That was the year that they were the number one defense in the NFL. That was COVID 2020 season. 2021, they're Super Bowl champs. They were 15th in the NFL in points per game. They were 17th in yards per game. But they found that year in the playoffs. They became a much more dominant, ferocious defense in the playoffs. And who was the play caller then. That was Raheem Morris, right? So, so then you get Raheem for 3 years, and again, in Raheem's 3 years, his little 3-year run, they never had a top 15 or out. I guess technically they had the 15th rank, but it's not like they were a top 10 defense, right? So this year's Rams defense, outside of 2020, was the best of the McVay era, which is saying a lot, right? Like, and you look at this year, and they've had some ups and some downs in terms of what we've seen from this defense. They've had some issues in regards to health. They haven't been as healthy. And so when you look at it from that perspective, that's kind of how I've started to kind of look at things. Not to go back to Saleh too much, but what Saleh did the last 2 weeks with the MASH unit that he's had is really impressive. I mean, there's no other way to put that, right? Like they gave up 13 points to the Seahawks in a winner takes the top spot in the NFC game. The offense couldn't help, but his defense did enough. And then in a do or die, obviously loser goes home on the road in Philly. His defense only gives up 19 points. That matters when you're looking at these things, because that's a guy that can inspire wins. Shula is now 1-0 this season in the playoffs. They're going to have a huge test this week, and I don't knock them for if they struggle or if they lose these games. Like, it is what it is, but I do like to see what they do, especially when their backs against the wall, like we have seen from San Francisco. The thing with Shula is I think he's probably a year early. Wouldn't you think? Like, I know it's his second year as a DC, but he's fairly young still. He's not even 40 yet.
Yeah, he's very Jonathan Gannon, right?
Right. And so that's my question on Shula.
And then we get Jesse Minter, defensive coordinator for the Chargers, was defensive coordinator for Michigan for their title run. But basically, he is a Harbaugh guy because he spent the time before he was in college on John Harbaugh's staff from 2017 to 2020. So he's a Harbaugh and Harbaugh type guy who's coached. He was a defensive assistant. He's coached defensive backs, coordinator. So he's another, another Jonathan Gannon-y, Steve Wilkes, Vance Joseph kind of guy. He's worked his way up. Those defensive backs coaches who become defensive coordinators, who become head coaches. But his defenses for the Chargers the last 2 seasons have been devastatingly good.
Yeah, and that's, again, if you're looking at the quick turnaround, and you kind of pointed out off the air, right? Seattle and then Chicago.
And Denver too.
Oh, sorry, Seattle and Denver. Sorry. Seattle and Denver and their quick turnaround. And obviously Seattle's is Mike McDonald, and that's a huge deal, but Clint Kubiak's done a great job. But you look at Seattle specifically, and this year they're first in points against, they're 6th in yards. Last year they were 11th in points against, they were 14th in yards. The year before that, so Pete Carroll's last year, by the way, they were 9-8. The Cardinals would kill to be 9-8. They were 25th in points and 30th in yards. So Pete Carroll, a noted defensive guru who's had some of the best defenses in NFL history previously, it grew stale. I mean, think about Carroll, right? From 2012 to 2015, he had the number 1 scoring defense every single year. In 2011 he had the 7th, and in 2016 he had the 3rd. He had a top 7 scoring defense 6 consecutive years in a row. And then it fell off a cliff. And that's what happens in the NFL. So then you got a new guy, and this is what's so interesting is you go, you whether it's the Cardinals or other teams, we obviously just focus on the Cardinals, so that's what makes us laugh. Is you gotta go with the offensive guy. Well, do you? I mean, it hasn't hurt Seattle to go from a defensive guy to a defensive guy. I mean, all they did was they went from 25th and 30th to 1st and 6th overall in team defense. And you look at Denver, and Denver's the same thing. We can talk about, what Sean Payton's done. They're 14th on offense in scoring. They're 10th in yards. But on defense, they're 3rd in points against and 2nd in yards against. I mean, this is
why Vance Joseph is a candidate here.
and it's dominant, and it allows you to have struggles if you are Bo Nix, if you are Sam Darnold, right? You can have off games, you can have bad games and not have to worry about it. And the thing is going back to Vance, he had 1 year where those 2 years, 2020 and 2021, top 15 defenses, 13th in yards and 12th in points in 2020, 11th in both in 21, and then it fell off a cliff. But we also understood there was issues, right? There were, especially along the defensive front, that had just never been addressed even before he got here. So you look at Denver. He came in 2023, and it was bad, man. I mean, they went 8-9. He was 19th in points against and 27th 27th in points against and 29th in yards. But here's the thing. The next year, 3rd in points against, 7th in yards. The next year, 3rd in points against, 2nd in yards. Like, that's what you should see. Now, obviously, if he collapses and they start to struggle and blah, 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 that's different. But so again, I'm not anti-Shula in any way, but I would like to see him have another year where his defenses are living up to that before I bring him in as the guy. But I also understand the realization that you're the Cardinals. Sometimes you have to hire guys a year early and hope it works out, right?
And that's kind of how I feel about all. And I'll say this, something I've said before: the way the Cardinals, unless they have a plan in place, I don't think anyone's going to come in and be successful right away. And I'll also said this too about coaches. I don't believe that there are many difference-making coaches in the NFL, and that coaches, by and large, head coaches, by and large, succeed or fail because of, injuries, talent on the roster, quarterback situations, and just not having, it ends up not being the right marriage. Because I think any head coach in the NFL, any coordinator wanting to be a head coach could find success. And it's just some guys that seem to be difference makers. This year, it feels like Ben Johnson's been a different maker for the Bears because of the way that they carry themselves, the confidence with which they play at the end of games. They believe they're going to win. They've bought into that. And with Gannon, it kind of felt like it was starting to go that way, but that was more belief in Kyler than anything. They never Like they didn't feel like they knew how to win games, and then they kept losing, and they didn't know how to win games, and so that's kind of where that went. But yeah, coming up next on the Rise of Secret podcast, Mr. Cardinals talking. Well, we got a weekend of playoff games to talk about. What did we think about what we saw? What do we think about the matchups coming up? That's coming next on Rise of Secret. We're back on the Rise of Secret podcast, Mr. Cardinals talk on the web, talking NFL playoffs. It's going to be fun, as we like to joke. The Cardinals are in the NFC West. The NFC West happens to have guys. They have 3 teams of the final 4 in the NFC in the playoffs. All 3 of them won 12 or more games. It's going to be a fun week of that. But if we look back on the weekend, what a fun weekend of NFL football in terms of entertainment. If you weren't actively rooting for one or the other team, or rooting against one or the other team, the first 4 games were just thrilling, and then the last 2 games were just dominant. And it starts with the Rams game. The Rams, they don't know how to be consistent, but it was really cool. Like if you're talking about, you got to see the growth of Bryce Young. I think it was Daniel Jeremiah when he guided that go ahead touchdown with 2:39 left. He's like, that's Bama Bryce. And we've seen Bryce Young's kind of going on the trajectory of Kyler Murray into kind of inconsistent. He had a good game. He managed the offense, but they just really struggled with the Rams, who moved the ball so well offensively. Matthew Stafford, oh my gosh, that throw and catch by Colby Parkinson in the last minute, that was wild. That was so good. That was so good. Such a great throw, an amazing catch for a pretty good tight end in Colby Parkinson. But to how clutch, that was one of those things where you gave the ball back to the Rams and you're like, they're going to win this. And they had blown the doors off the Cardinals. They had come back and then choked against the Falcons, and they had fallen. They had gotten beat by the Panthers earlier in the late part of the season. And so this was, it wasn't pretty for the Rams, but I still think they're the most dangerous team in the NFC.
Yeah, and I really expected them to be better consistently on defense, but I also don't want to take away from the Panthers. The Cardinals' very good win over the Panthers early in the season. When you look at it from that perspective, right? Like the Panthers are a team that have had their struggles on offense, but have found ways to win games that mattered, especially late in the season, including that 31-28 win over the Rams. But I don't think anybody was overly surprised by the result, outside of that it was as close as it was. I just need to see a little more from the defense if I'm going to buy the Rams to be the team that wins it all, right?
They've got all the potential because they've got the stars on both sides of the ball. They've been so inconsistent, and their defense has been, from start to finish, been questionable. Then you go to the Bears-Packers game. The Bears looked dead in the water, and the Packers just choked it away. And the Bears got another come from behind victory. Ben Johnson got those guys believing. Caleb Williams is showing that he, like, even when he's not great, like he is turnover prone, and he had 2 interceptions in that game. But some of the great quarterbacks in the NFL would also throw interceptions, but come up big in big moments. And 361 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. And, they were down 21-3 at halftime. They go field goal, touchdown. Matthew Golden with his first NFL touchdown, and then two touchdown passes by Caleb Williams in the final 4 minutes and 18 seconds, which was really freaking good. He has a little something to him. Whether he turns into a great, we'll have to wait and see the consistency. But one thing we're seeing from Caleb Williams, the moment's never too big for him, and he is a playmaker.
Yeah, and you look at it, this is going to be a really interesting matchup because both teams have a tendency to let the other teams hang around. And so now you're going to get a game where, or I shouldn't say that. What I should say is you have a tendency of the Bears to let teams get out in front, but the Rams are a team that lets teams hang around. They don't necessarily let teams come back, but they let teams kind of hang, and you're like, are you going to put this team away? And so that'll be what's really interesting to watch in that game, because with the way that the Rams have played, specifically, against Seattle, right? They were up 23-14, and I think they were even up at one point
30-14.
Yeah, 30-14, and they let the other team, like, this kind of has the makings of that, right? Like, the Rams get out to a big lead, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, here we go, here come the Bears, but the Bears have played that way against a lot, like most teams this year. So it'll be interesting to see how that game goes. I know we'll break it down more, but yeah, I mean, what can you say about the Bears other than, can you do something early in the game?
Right. Then you got the Sunday morning game, which was seriously about exactly as we thought it would go down. Super close game. Josh Allen willing himself he had 3 total touchdowns and pulling away with a win. Josh Allen scoring the game-winning touchdown with 1:04 left. Trevor Lawrence, as you pointed out in our group text, like, he didn't have a bad game, but man, he can be turnover prone. And while he made some plays, he also threw interceptions and got picked off on that final drive, on that first play, which kind of ended it. And what is it now? 7 interceptions in 3 career playoff games for Trevor Lawrence.
I know, you almost feel bad for him at this point because he didn't play poorly in this game, but it also is one of those numbers that you just look at and you're like, oh man, that's who he is. Like, he's a gambler in big games, and he makes too many consistent mistakes in the playoffs to be a guy that you could potentially, win a championship with. Now, doesn't mean he can't get there. He's just a guy that has to find a way to cut down on those mistakes and not throw interceptions at the most inopportune times. But man, I mean, Allen and Cook did okay against one of the best rushing defenses in the NFL, but Allen is just a guy that's going to, try and will this team to a Super Bowl, because this is probably the best chance he has.
Right. They've got so much pressure on them, and no one's talking about it, but everyone's talking. Josh Allen and Bill shot somebody. Oh, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. There's no Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So the road is paved, and they did it the hard way. They had to go on the road to do it, and now they're gonna have to go on the road again to do that this week, which is gonna be a wild game. And honestly, when you talk, like, I like the Bills in that game because of frankly the experience that they've got in there. But what a fun game to watch. If you had no rooting interest, those first 3 playoff games were just back and forth and just fun. I mean, you got really great football. And then you got the final 3 games. You got the 49ers, who who lose George Kittle to a torn Achilles. They keep, I don't know what it is, but they keep doing it, and they keep finding ways to produce offensively. Brock Purdy threw a pair of touchdowns and was picked off twice. Juwan Jennings with the touchdown pass to Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey with 2 touchdowns for the game, over 100 yards. Demarcus Robinson with 111 yards. Kyle Juszczyk with 4 catches. And, and somehow with Saquon Barkley rushing for over 100 yards, what it was is the fact that they kept the Eagles from doing anything in the passing game. Jalen Hurts wasn't great. And like I thought the 49ers would be a one and done team because their defense is too decimated. And it turns out that the defense has been coming up big. And maybe that's a Robert Salt. Maybe that's that they've been schemed up for that, but they keep losing guys and finding ways to win, which is, if you look at the 49ers, look at the Cardinals. I'm like, this is how you do it. Now you need your most important player in Christian McCaffrey staying healthy and being special, right? If the 49ers have had that success because they've had Christian McCaffrey all year. But again, another game that was back and forth. It goes from 13-10 to 16-10 to the touchdown pass from Juwan Jennings to go up 17-16. They get a field goal to go up 19-17 to Eagles, and then with 2:54 left, Christian McCaffrey's touchdown. They go ahead 23-19, only to the Eagles to drive down the field and then to make those plays at the very, very end of the game to end it and keep them out of the end zone, which is another reason why you always want to be up by more than 3 if you're on the field defensively, because as the Cardinals have been, were snake bit so many times because they played that careful defense when the team could go down the field and either tie it or win it with a field goal.
Yeah, and I just don't buy anything from San Francisco beyond what they did this weekend. But you also can never count out what Shanahan does somehow, some way every week.
And
right?
Sam Darnold could be a pumpkin.
Yeah, right.
Oh, the Patriots-Chargers game. That
Boring.
that was rough to watch, man. That, like, if you like defensive football, great. But that was rough to watch. But man, the Patriots. It's kind of unfair. And then the absolute beatdown that the Texans put on the Steelers, and they just wore them out because it was a close. It was 7-6 going into the fourth quarter, and for about the first half, it was 100% the Texans were being outplayed. But we called it, didn't we? Defensive touchdown.
Yeah,
and they got 2.
Yeah, we called the under in this one. You said 39. If you wanted to take it down to 39.5, only ended up being 36. Like, this is, again, it wasn't obvious, but it was pretty obvious how that game was going to play out, right? Like, the defenses were going to be the stars of the show, and all the offenses had to do was not screw it up. And while the Texans,
that was literally CJ Stroud. I saw the funniest thing. It was CJ Stroud helping the Texans on their win, and it was this meme of guys moving a big cabinet and one guy just sort of being there. And that was Stroud, although he did the touchdown pass. Christian, like Nico Collins going down, that's going to be rough, man. But that defense is good enough because it's great to see, because Christian Kirk, who people think, I'm like, you give him an opportunity, he still got it. He still got it. He can do it. And Woody Marks, 112 yards, just a fantastic game. And then you look at, and then we look at, and we're like, oh, Will Anderson. He could be a Cardinal.
Yep. he played.
Could be a Cardinal.
But also, I think he's just in the system that fits him the best, right? Like you're talking about a defense that is otherworldly in the way they play and they vibe off their coach.
And their defensive coordinator was the Cardinals' defensive line coach not too long ago.
Is it something that is sustainable? I genuinely don't know. But
goodbye Mike Tomlin. Maybe goodbye Aaron Rodgers.
So it's definitely interesting though.
And, Aaron Rodgers did not get to have the Brett Favre sort of comeback. Now Brett Favre had the big year with Minnesota, and then feebly walked away the next season after that. And Aaron Rodgers did get the Steelers to the playoffs, but it wasn't enough, and it kind of went how I expected. I didn't expect the Texans to score 30 points, but then again, how often can you predict 2 defensive touchdowns in a game? In a game that would otherwise ended up being 16-6, which would have been kind of the vibe we expected. But that was a fun weekend of football. We now have 3 NFC West teams in the mix still. We'll talk about the games in our later show. But we've got Bills, Broncos, 49ers, Seahawks, Texans, Patriots, and Rams, Bears. And right now, my prediction for the Super Bowl, I'm going Rams, Bills still. That's kind of what I kind of had pegged entering the postseason. I think it's going to be Rams, Bills, and I think it'll be a really fun Super Bowl. But watch out for those defenses. The Texans Patriots game is going to be something else. Let's do one more segment. Coming up next on the Rise Up Sierra podcast, the Star Cardinals Talk of the Web. We've got all pro votes, we got all pro selections, and a couple of surprising votes for the Cardinals. That's coming up next on Rise Up Sea Red. We're back on the Rise Up Sea Red podcast, the Star Cardinals Talk on the Web. All pro votes came in, and not expectedly at all. Like not unexpectedly. It was not surprising. Trey McBride, all pro first team, was by some robbed of a unanimous selection. Jackson Smith would have given 3 NFC West skill players unanimous selections to the first team all pro team as Puka Nacua of the Rams and Jackson Smith and Jigba of the Seahawks both swept. Both got all 50 of the first place votes for their position, which is actually pretty impressive to do. So they were, you could give 2 first place votes at the receiver position, and they were all of them. Trey McBride was robbed. I don't honestly care, because whatever. One person voted for George Kittle, and while no, George Kittle, but that was a legacy vote. And if I had to guess, I'm guessing that the guy that voted for George Kittle is someone who covers the Niners of Northern California. It must be.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people that doesn't really care about that.
If you're an all-pro, you're an all-pro. Who cares if it's unanimous?
Right, because it's not like you get anything else. It's not like they can be like, oh my gosh, you get paid extra money because you're a unanimous all-pro. No, it's like, no. So I don't care about that as long as he got the nod. I'm excited for Trey, right? It's great to see him get acknowledged for a great season. It is interesting to look at. Like, I was kind of laughing, because outside of touchdowns, which are important, obviously, this season wasn't as good as last season, right? Like he had a lot more targets.
It was higher volume. So right. Like from a volume standpoint, he was second in the NFL in receptions. He was 6th in the NFL in yards. He was tied for second with touchdown receptions. But like, if you look at like he had numbers, he averaged fewer yards per reception this season.
Yeah, fewer yards per reception and game. Because that was the thing. So he didn't play all 6 or 17 games last year, right? So that's what was interesting. And then, yeah, it's just it was just interesting to see that, because like when I looked at, because I use Pro Football Reference and their approximate value, and I would assume this would have been like a really really high year, and it was. I mean, 10 is a really high number for
singular year. It's big.
Yeah, but his approximate value last year was 11, and so I was just like, that's actually funny. But that's the thing, is like, in the scheme of everything, just having those volume numbers matter to voters.
Well, that's the thing. Here's the thing: like people laugh at the Pro Bowl. People laugh at the Pro Bowl. And they're like, it means nothing. No, Pro Bowl is the one I think that carries the most weight for players, because you do get fans, but it's only a third, and then you get your peers and coaches. It's players and coaches voting. You know who votes on the Associated Press, like for the All Pro? 50 media members. 50 media members. And, almost all of them are in a region or in a particular market. Most of them are in a particular market. And so they're going to naturally have some bias in that sense, which leads to a couple of interesting things. That's how George Kittle, with only playing 11 games, gets an All-Pro vote, because that's a legacy vote, because it's how you do it is, I guess, is probably saying who is the best player as opposed to the best season this year. And you can argue that even like George Kittle through 11 games might still be a better player than Trey McBride. Does it really matter that Trey McBride was on one ballot, a second place vote instead of a first place vote? No, it's dumb. But let me point something else that is just as absurd that benefited the Cardinals, and that is, and when we go around looking at the All Pro votes, Buda Baker got All Pro votes. So did Calais Campbell. I'll get to that one. But the one that is hilariously absurd, Cardinals punter Matt Hawk, their third punter of the year, was unemployed half the season. He didn't play a game before he was signed off the street. He was not the Cardinals' first option when Blake Gillikin went on injured reserve. He played 7 games. He had a great 7 games, averaging over 51 yards a punt, 43 yards net, no touchbacks, 10 inside. He got an All-Pro vote. Somebody put him as second place on their ballot, which is crazy to me. A guy that was unemployed for half the year. And you have, it's a simple vote. So yeah, that's really, really interesting. I don't know if I've seen anything like it. The other one, Calais Campbell, who got not only a vote on special teams, a first place vote. Now, special teams, that's a hard one to vote because there's lots of different things. Calais Campbell was fantastic special teams. He blocked 2 kicks this year. So that one to me isn't absurd, but I was floored when Matt Hawk got an All-Pro vote.
Yeah, that was kind of shocking, but it also goes to show you that everybody's got their agenda, and we don't know what it is.
100%. And truth be told, that first place vote for Calais Campbell, I would not be surprised if it is the AP voter, the AP reporter here. Because
or even in Jacksonville or somewhere like that, where he or Baltimore, where because that's the thing with Calais is
true.
He tends to endear himself to everybody. So
he's the Larry Fitzgerald of defensive players, right?
Yep. So
yeah, that was interesting. Buda Baker, tells you the type of year that he had. Now, granted, there were some safeties who had fantastic years. Kyle Hamilton and Kevin Byard were the All-Pro selection, with Jesse Bates. And Jesse Bates next, another fantastic. Xavier McKinley and Talanoa Hufanga tied for the final second-team spot. Buda Baker got only 2 second-place votes. And, as it wasn't a dynamic year for Buddha. It wasn't a bad year for Buddha, but it wasn't a great year. I mean, the fact that he got 2 second place votes with the names on that list who are ahead of him. Look, these are the players who had more votes, who had more votes than, or at least as many, who got more points. See, Julian Love in Seattle got 1 vote, but was the first place vote. Cameron Bynum in Indianapolis, Jalen Hawkins in New England had 4 points with 1 first, so 2 second place, 1 first place vote. Antoine Winfield in Tampa Bay had 6 total votes, 5 second place. I'm sorry, 6. So he had 7 total votes. I can't do math. So 6 second place votes, 1 first place vote. Cameron Curl for the Rams got 3 first place votes and no second place votes. Antonio Johnson, Jacksonville, had 13 points, so he had 11. So he ended up with it looks like 7 second place votes and 2 first place votes. Kalen Bullock, Talanoa Hufanga, Xavier McKinney, Jesse Bates, Kevin Byard, Kyle Hamilton. All those names above there, like I would have put. I guess you get 2 safety spots, and so you get 2 first place and 2 second place votes. I would have done Hamilton, Byard as my 2 first place, and it would have been Bates and McKinney, in my opinion. So I would have put Buddha on my ballot if I voted this year.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Any all-pro selections that you were surprised by?
I love when guys like Bijan Robinson get votes as running back and then flex or utility, whatever they call it, player. I'm like,
yeah, all-purpose.
I'm like, guys, come on, just give that to somebody else. Like, I get it, it's cool, but like, why? Like, just do the right thing and be like, okay, so Bijan was second, so who was third? Okay, we're gonna give it to the third place guy, because again,
so Bijan was first team running back, second team all-purpose guy. Yeah. So he got 2 all-pro selections in one. Christian McCaffrey, who was the all-purpose. I do kind of like that they do that in a way, because
I like that
it allows you essentially to honor an extra running back,
right?
Basically,
I like that, but I don't need the same guy getting both. But wasn't it a couple years ago that somebody got both? Wasn't it? I can't remember who.
Khalil Mack, I think it was.
Yeah. So, yeah,
it's a defensive end and a linebacker.
Yeah, and I'm just like, hey, can we, like, because like you said, that stuff matters in contract negotiations.
Yes, it does.
So like, Bijan being first team and second team doesn't get him anything extra. But let's just throw a name out there, right? Like, I don't know, just say James Conner in a healthy year, if he was the second team, or he was technically the third team, all-purpose player, he wouldn't have been on either of them, and so he doesn't get it. So like, that's what sucks. And it's not like Bijan can,
like someone like Travis Etienne, for example.
Right, exactly. Like, if he was the third guy after whoever's first team, or you said it was McCaffrey, right? So McCaffrey first team and then Bijan second team, like, just elevate the third guy. Like, just, it's not hard. It's not like it's difficult.
Yeah, it's weird how they do that, because actually, let me look at the voting, how they did that. Did they do all purpose? So they have a separate one that you could do. So Christian McCaffrey got 35 first place votes as all purpose. Bijan Robinson got the other 15. And then Bijan Robinson got 23 of the first place votes for running back. James Cook ended up in second place. But these are all guys who got first place votes at running back. Bijan Robinson, James Cook, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, and Jahmyr Gibbs. While the all-purpose, the only first place votes went to McCaffrey and Bijan. So
yeah,
it's really weird how that goes. But, and so I guess in a way, maybe how they should do it is, if a guy is like whichever one. So in the case of Robinson, since he's first team All-Pro running back and he's second team All-Pro all-purpose, that would nullify because he's already a first team All-Pro, and then you give that to someone else. Which in this case, because McCaffrey was the first team all-purpose, then it would have gone to. Let me pull that back up again. As I blew right by it, it would have been Jahmyr Gibbs, because McCaffrey was already first team all-purpose, and Bijan Robinson was already first team running back, so you could give it to Jahmyr Gibbs instead.
Yeah,
or yeah, who knows? Who knows? But I mean, good on Trey McBride. It makes sense. Here are, by the way, the NFC West guys that are represented in the 2 All-Pro teams. Matthew Stafford. Okay. Oh, let me see. Oh, let me pull up the teams instead of the votes. So we have Matthew Stafford, Kyle Juszczyk, that fullback position, Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith and Jigma, Christian McCaffrey, Trey McBride. So basically the skill players. Then you go on defense, no one on defense on the first team. Then we go second team, you add Trent Williams, left tackle. On defense, you add Leonard Williams, Seattle, Ernest Jones at linebacker, Seattle, Devon Witherspoon, cornerback, Seattle. And then for second team punter, Michael Dixon, Seattle. You see a trend there, right? Lots of NFC West, lots of Seahawks, which makes sense.
Yep. Best teams get the most players.
They do. And with that, we'll wrap up this edition of the Rest of Year podcast. Mr. Cardinals back on talk on the web. We'll be back later this week at least once. If there's no new coaching news, we won't talk about that. We'll just talk playoffs. But if so, we might record a pair of shows so we can give you a Cardinals show and a playoff pick show. Until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Roll!